All right, everybody, welcome back to Comics Only, the only podcast where comedians talk with other comedians. My guest today is writer, comedian, and podcaster Mike James. What's up, dude?
Not much. How you doing?
Pretty good. You like
Good.
that little radio intro?
Yeah, I like that.
yeah. I've been working on it.
I like that whole, especially the fact that this is a novel idea, having comics on a podcast. I don't know,
To talk about comedy?
Yeah.
Yeah. The irony is kind of like not very subtle. It's like, it's almost making fun of what podcasts are, but then it's also just doing that.
Yeah, and making fun of the fact that you're making fun of it.
Right. It's like, you know that part of the podcast that everybody hates the most? We're just going to do that for an hour.
Perfect.
But I know there are like legitimately open mic comedians that find a lot of value in this and some guidance and like, because like it's useful to hear. I heard you like when I booked Karina for this podcast. You're like, that kind of makes it less special for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you mentioned that the other night.
Because she just started. It's like she just took a class and like, I'm not even sure she's been to an open mic. But that's like an interesting perspective to hear. It's like, for somebody else that's in her position, it's like, what do you do? It's like, well, you need to figure out where the open mics are.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of newer comics, or used to more in the past, but that was always the big question. So what do I do now? Or,
right.
Where do I go? Where do I,
I still have that feeling sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
I think everybody does, but the answer is always the same. Get on stage. Whenever.
Well, that's true. Yeah. I mean, write more, get on stage more is like the easiest advice that always works.
Yeah.
That like a lot of people don't want to hear.
Yep, I agree.
And like get good shoes. People don't like that. It's like you're gonna be standing around a lot, dude.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
You don't want your feet to hurt.
Yeah.
It's really good advice. People don't want to take it.
And be nice to the people around you.
Yeah, be nice to the people
Keep
around
running
you.
into 'em.
Most importantly, staff.
Yeah.
Anybody who works for the clubs or anything like that, or the bars, wherever you are.
I think
And then just the lesser extent, other comics.
I've always had this reputation of not that I'm not nice to people, but that I'm standoffish or something.
Yeah.
And I think it's just I'm not a talkative person, so most people and to be honest, I don't remember a lot of people. So people come up to me and like they know me, and I'm like, I kind of fake it, but I'm not real talkative, and that's not good, but that's how I am. So people, I think,
but it's good to be genuine. So it's like if that's who you are, then just roll with it.
Dude, I was just telling this story the other night actually, but years and years ago, like I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, a comic came up to me at Tempe Improv, and it was like a showcase kind of thing. But there was a bunch of comics coming in, and I was in the green room, and one of them came up to me and shook my hand and said, "Oh, it's good to see you, man. You've been out there doing this stuff," and he's giving me accolades about how well I was doing at the time, and I was just so burnt out on the pretending to be, like I know you. And I told him, I just said, "Oh, thanks, man. I'll be honest, I don't know who you are." and I could see it just deflated him, and I probably should have said it better. But
I was just gonna say you probably could put that a little more tactfully. Just like, hey, what's your name again?
Yeah. Where did I meet you? Yeah.
I do get that a lot, where like comics will they're like, hey, good to see you again. You're like, this is the first time we've met. They just like didn't want to have forgotten you. But I mean, I've done that to people. There's this comic in Eureka, California. The last like 6 times I've seen him, I've been like, we've met before, right? He's like 6 times, dude. I'm like, I'm sorry, man. Like,
I'm awful with that.
You change your name. You change your look a lot. You shave and then you have a beard all of a sudden. I can't keep up.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
And
I'm horrible that
we
way.
meet like an insane amount of people doing comedy. Like, I never met so many people. I always just had my friends kind of.
Yeah.
And then I started doing comedy, and you just are constantly meeting new comics, meeting people who want to talk to you after shows.
Yeah.
Or
If you're doing a show somewhere and somebody, hey, I saw you were coming. I came out to see you. And you're like, oh, I don't know. Have we met? I try to fake it, but And again, I'm not trying to be disingenuous, but I'm horrible with names and places and people and stuff. So. Yeah.
All right. So how long have you been doing comedy?
I started out with performing comedy in, I don't know, probably 18 or 19 years ago.
Yeah.
But I didn't really start stand-up. I did improv and stuff. And I didn't start stand-up till about 15 years ago.
Okay, but 15 years
Yeah,
of stand up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's all been in Phoenix.
Well, I started in Phoenix, yeah. So, but yeah,
But not all
mostly-
in Phoenix.
yeah.
Yeah, you travel for sure.
right.
But
yeah,
like,
but I've
but-
been based in Phoenix since I started. Yeah.
nice. So you've really seen some like transformations of the scene, I would imagine.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Not as much as you would think. You'd think 15 years would be completely different, but I mean, there's a lot of. I guess there's a lot of change. But there's a lot of things that just never change.
Yeah, a lot that stays the same. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I get you on that. There's probably going to always be that where there's like an overall feel to the scene that feels like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I've seen clubs come and go, and
Yeah,
and
but
all
a
that stuff,
club's
but-
basically a club,
Yep.
you know.
Yeah, I started.
It's
off,
very rare that you get one that's like special, you know. Most of them are just
Right.
boxes for comedy.
Oh,
but-
yeah, especially if it's just a venue for a weekend show. It's not actually a comedy club itself. I started off at the Comedy Spot, which is actually just a venue that was inside of another venue. It was just a room inside a venue that that the guy. The deal there was he took the door, but the venue got all the food and drink. So he was just there taking tickets at the door and booking the comics and stuff. That was the Comedy Spot in Scottsdale, and it was there for I don't know till just during COVID. I think is when it finally
Sure.
folded up. But
Yeah.
it was a long running one. But that was a great club. He did had a lot of big mistakes. He never got such a regular audience that he could just rely on that
Right.
because he'd book a headliner to come in, but then he'd book like 5 local guys because they could bring people.
Right.
So the shows were never awesome.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I mean, the shows went pretty well, but there was always an element of open micness to it, you know?
Right.
So, and there's clubs, JP's does the same thing now, you know, it's just
Sure.
put a bunch of people up, and then, and that was a problem he had, that he'd put himself up. It was his club, so he'd go up, and he wasn't bad comic, he just, he kind of, I don't know.
Do you
dilutes
ever
it a
go
bit.
up at JP's?
No, he's never booked me over there. I've asked a few times, but he's never booked me, and I don't, you know.
I knew the answer.
For
to
some
that, Mike.
reason, for some reason, he thinks I work at Tom's Club at Stir Crazy, or that I'm a part owner or something, which I'm not. I don't.
Right.
I've never done anything aside from performing there occasionally.
Yeah, but
But yeah, so for some reason he thinks that, and because of that, and because he can't get booked at Stir Crazy, he kind of holds his grudge against me, like I'm associated with that. in some
Yeah.
ways, which is fine. I'm not worried about getting booked over at JP's too much. But
yeah.
but yeah, Joe, he does the same thing. JP, you know, that's a stage for him to go on.
Mm-hmm.
Comedy Spot was the same way. Howard Hughes was the same way. The only reason he had a club is because he couldn't get booked anywhere, so he just created a club where he could go up on stage.
Yeah.
And, it's always a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
They'll last for a
Totally.
little while, but not too long.
Yeah. Don't say taking Stir Crazy out of it.
Mhm.
What's your next favorite club? Not necessarily in the Valley, anywhere
Oh.
that you've been.
There was one in North Dakota in Fargo called Caroline's, and it wasn't the Caroline's, the other Caroline's, but it was
Yeah.
called Caroline's, and it was just a hole in the wall. It was at a hotel. They just did comedy night at the hotel there,
Yeah.
in the hotel bar, and I don't know why that was. I just loved it.
You
There.
just
was,
loved it?
was
Nice.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always had great audiences and all that. I don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah.
So currently, I don't know. I don't know what would be my favorite one. I don't do that many clubs anymore. It's
Interesting. You do a lot of casinos.
I did casinos, mostly corporate things.
Nice.
I did cruise ships for a while.
How was that?
It's good. It's
Good.
good.
You didn't. As long as you can like kind of handle the cruise, I'm sure the rest
Yeah.
is fine.
Well, that's really all it is. You're on, like, typically, this isn't the case every time, but typically you're on board for a cruise, which is about a week long.
Yeah.
And in that time, you do one night of comedy. You do a couple 45-minute shows. You're the
That's it.
headline act.
Once.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll have you do like part of a variety act where you do another
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes during another show or something. But
Sure.
normally that's the gig. And so the rest of the time you're just on board that.
Oh, I
shit.
can handle that. I don't think.
It's really boring.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys make their career doing it.
I've
and
heard there's
they-
got to be like other options because somebody was telling me, like Keith Ellis or somebody was telling me they do cruises sometimes and like it's like 2 shows a night, 4 nights in a row
Yeah,
or something.
some of the ships have
Okay,
start
yeah,
doing
yeah.
a comedy club so that you'll go up and they'll have other comics
Okay,
on board and you each
okay.
do 20 minutes.
That's kind of
Yeah, a
cool.
couple shows
I
a
could
night.
handle that if there was
Yeah.
other comics to hang out with on the boat,
That's
and I got to do comedy every night. I
That
could
was
handle
kind of a
that.
thing for me because
Yeah.
normally if I was booked on a ship, I'm the only comic. They
Yeah, that
usually
sounds
have some
horrible.
headline music act,
Yeah,
me, and then like a magician or something.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I didn't meet a lot of other comics not doing the ships.
Yeah, right. Like comics are horrible, awful people, which is why I like spending time around them.
They really can be. Yeah. I'll tell you, man, I've been doing this a long time, and I've got just a very small handful of people that are like, I would say, are friends. After doing this,
Right.
all this time, they're like, these
Yeah,
are good friends of mine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I have a lot of respect for anybody that can get on stage and try to tell jokes.
yeah,
And at the same time, this is like the most awful group of people I've ever encountered in my life. And I used to do meth.
That's true. Yeah.
And like, man, in reality, meth addicts are like just one step above comics in like the craziness scale. It's not that different, dude.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some overlap there. I don't.
For sure.
I shouldn't get into that, but there's definitely some comics in the Phoenix scene with problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they let me know because, like, the thing is, when you used to do meth, every now and then somebody will hit you up and just be like, "Hey, I have meth, just so you know." You're like, "I don't feel like relapsing today, but thanks for the offer."
I have a spot in my open mic, just so you know.
Yeah. Good thing I get to go tell jokes tonight, and I don't need that anymore. Casinos, cruises, corporates. What kind of corporates?
Well,
I don't know much about the corporate world.
Corporate for me includes not just literal corporate jobs where it's a corporation's hired you to do their Christmas party or their sales meeting or whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
But also I include also things like community events that are just paid privately through a private organization.
Sure. Yeah.
Perform for them specifically.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of a mix of that. But for the like corporate ones, typically holiday shows, things like that. But also they'll have their annual conference.
Yeah.
And they hire entertainment for that. So I'll do those ones.
Yeah.
Those corporate ones are the most difficult.
Oh, of course.
They're a lot harder than anything else. But I learned to like them because it was a challenge and all that, and I learned to kind of figure out, okay, this is how I can.
And it's a
this.
good lane to have carved out for yourself.
Yeah.
Like by far, you have like the least competition from other like comics. There's so many comics that are just like, I'm not going to do clean, so I won't even go for that kind of stuff.
For sure. And if you're comparing it to like trying to get booked at a club, there's way less competition. But
I mean, I'm sure it's still stiff.
It's a little bit, and it's a tough negotiation too, because it's like, there's no set price for a corporate event normally. It's not like, an hour for a corporate comedian costs $2,500.
Right.
It's not. It's like how much are you going to charge? Well, what's your budget and how many people? It's back and forth, and then somebody's going to underbid you, and you just hopefully you come across as a better comic than them when they choose you.
Right. Of course.
There's always, no matter what it could be, IBM in town or GM or whoever it is, and they're having some big convention.
Yeah.
And they put it out there, and then so booking agencies will reach out to me and say, "Hey, are you interested in this?"
Yeah.
But for sure, there'll always be somebody that probably people you even know that will say, "Oh yeah, I'll do it for $150."
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
And then
I mean, comics, show up just for the stage time.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's always people undercutting you. It's got to be annoying. That's the thing about doing something, like comics go to open mics, which, if you think about it, they're literally paying to be there. If you think gas, if you're not an asshole, you're buying a drink and tipping, or if you're not broke, I give comics some leeway. At my open mic, I used to say, I was like, there's not a 1 drink minimum. Please buy something if you can. I know for some of you, it's literally not possible. So you can still do your time.
Right.
But if you're not a jerk off, you buy something. So
right.
There's a cost to being there when you're at an open mic.
But when you're going there to do the problem is you'll get some guy that offers some low amount and they go up there. Of course, they're going to bomb. It's going to be horrible. They won't be able to do the time they promised. All of that. No, that company's not going to hire a comic again for a while.
Yeah,
hopefully that's not true. But
that's a big problem. People overcharging for bad comedy.
Yeah,
there's a bar near here and I live near here. That I wanted to work with, and they had somebody that was producing shows for just like a lot of money, and they were delivering basically, local amateur Phoenix comics.
I see that a lot.
And it's just like not good enough if you're going to charge hundreds of dollars for a show. You need to get a real headliner in.
Yeah.
And like somebody, who can deliver.
Yeah, for sure.
Were you like around when Stir Crazy opened?
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
so you've seen like the whole.
Tom and I have been friends. We started comedy together.
Right. Yeah. I know you and Tom and Brian are all real
Yeah,
close.
and,
Yeah. You
the
can
three of us
tell
have been,
just when you hang with you guys.
Yeah, the three of us have been good friends for probably 15 years since we started. And
Yeah.
so yeah, Tom didn't open Stir Crazy till about 7 years ago. I
Right.
think. So yeah, but yeah, I've been with him for that whole ride for sure.
Was it pretty like slow at first, or was there like a pop when it opened? And then
he'd be a better person to ask.
Sure, yeah, I think I did.
But
ask
I did.
him,
but as I recall, it always did well from the beginning. It wasn't
Nice.
super profitable to start, and there was, I know he messed with the prices trying to get the right number for that. It used to be open all Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays. Then he cut it down to just Fridays and Saturdays. He was still open, do a Thursday show, a headline Thursday show for some comics and
Sure.
So in fact, Nick Guerra, I think there this weekend he did a Thursday show. In fact, that's that he did because that's the one I went out and helped out with. So anyway, but yeah, I think it's always been a successful club. It was always destined to be. Tom's got such a meticulous eye for detail on every little tiny thing.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I mean, to a fault, he didn't make it himself.
We sing the
sometimes.
praises of that a lot around here about how
that club is made
for comedy.
It's designed to succeed, and it does.
Yeah. It's a fun place to do comedy, and you can tell when you're on stage there that it's different than other clubs.
It's so amazing to me. I'll go to clubs sometimes that have been around for a long time, and you go and you think, how do you not understand that this is a bad idea?
There's still places I go where you have to sit and like turn your head to watch the show.
There's a lot of big clubs like that. Kimmel's Club in Vegas was one of the
Crazy.
worst shows I've
It's
ever
so
seen just because
crazy.
it's poorly run.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's still the case, but it was like that years ago. I don't know. There's so many places you go, and it's just like there was a Laugh Factory in town for a short time, and in Scottsdale, and I went out and did that 2 or 3 times when it was in town, and they had TV screens on the stage that were left on during the show. And it's like they didn't play music in and outs or anything. It was run like a bar show.
Yeah.
But in a nice venue. So of course it closed down pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's funny. It's like I'm used to doing comedy in front of TV screens in sports bars, but not at comedy clubs.
And even there, you hope you can tell them to turn it on. You shouldn't have to tell a comedy club not to have the TV on behind you.
No, you certainly should not. So, like, what would you say are the biggest changes you've seen then in the last, like?
To be honest, I think some of it was there's been influxes, and it's kind of a tide of up and downs with the number of comics out there trying to perform.
Mm-hmm.
When I went on, I don't recall there being so many millions. Of course, I didn't know.
There's a boom right now.
Yeah.
There is.
And then it was kind of pretty stable. But yeah, recently it's been this huge influx of, it seems like everybody, my neighbor told me, oh, my nephew does comedy. And, I don't know who he is, but but that doesn't mean anything. I don't know a lot of people.
You don't know anybody.
But so that's part of it. I think just the clubs coming and going. When Comedy Spot shut down, that was kind of a big deal in my mind anyway, because it had been there since I started. And
that's a big deal.
It was only, I think, 15 years old, which is not young, but
it's a good run. But you would hope it would go longer.
Sure. So when that was over, it was just kind of it was so much a part of when I started.
Yeah,
it's gone. I was like, oh wow, okay. Other clubs again, like the Laugh Factory and others, have come and gone. Tempe Improv was always the pinnacle of comedy in the country at one point.
Yeah,
the Tempe Improv was the comedy club. It's where most big stars started their tours, wrapped them up. It was the big club. And so when I performed there, it was a big deal to me. It was huge. So that's the other thing I think has changed is comedians' attitudes towards getting booked in clubs. We were just talking about this before we went on live here, but it really is amazing to me. You'll see people, just call last minute at a club saying, I don't feel good. I don't think I'm going to come out, or I'm going to take a mental health day or like bullshit.
That's crazy.
What on earth are you talking about? Yeah. This is your opportunity to get there. And you'll never get booked again. Just anybody listening out there, if you give a club the shaft, you will never get booked again.
Yeah, you got to be really sick to not show up day of. Yeah. There also is a lot of like comics trying to get into the clubs before they're ready.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like they're just like don't realize how much it would just benefit them to go like mic for a couple years and like not worry about club spots as much.
Yeah.
You know, do the mic, whatever. Like I'm not saying don't sign up for the open mic, but
Yeah, no, I think I still go to open mic. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
I'm working on new stuff or whatever, and any stage time for me is a good
right.
time.
People's impression of you matter, and if you like go up in front of the wrong people and are like not good too often, people are gonna think you're not a good comic.
Right,
You
right.
should be able to bring it in the club.
Yeah,
See,
for
people
sure.
have like less than a year in trying to like get on stage at House of Comedy a lot. It's like I don't know if that's benefiting you that much. Like,
Yeah, and I know Mike Dapper books over there, and I don't know how he does. I haven't worked over there in years. Before
it feels like the Sunday showcases are basically their version of an open mic.
Okay.
They put on like 12 comics and let them do 5 minutes each, except for maybe a couple people that do 7 that are like more established.
Yeah.
And they do those on Sundays, and I think sometimes Tuesdays or Wednesdays or something like that.
Yeah. Again, I don't know how he books, but like a lot of the clubs, they let people on to host, which people forget. Hosting is a difficult job. You
It's
gotta be
hard,
good,
man.
and
You gotta be
set the
good.
tone. You do everything. It's not just for beginners.
Yeah.
Having
And people
said
think
that-
they can just like host like without trying it before. It's like really hard.
right.
I hosted an open mic in Eugene for a year, right before I moved here, and it was probably the thing that made like me best at comedy of anything, you know, because it's so much thinking on your feet, so much saying something that you haven't committed to saying before. You're not just running material, so much like if you run like an open mic, that's oftentimes there's probably like maybe 8 to 12 times during a night that you have to like bring back a dead room.
Oh, yeah.
Or you at least
Constantly.
try, you know, where you're trying to like riff about what that comic said and try and find something funny in their bomb or whatever.
We did back when I started at the spot. We did 3 open mics on Sunday night, and we wouldn't get out of there till 2 in the morning.
Oh my God, that sounds so fun
And
though. I
they
wish we had
they
something
were great, but
here.
I for a long time I hosted all of them every time. So it's I'm bringing up
You're
35,
hosting
40
for like
different
7
comics.
hours
Yeah.
or something.
I'm bringing up 35, 40 comics through the whole night, but every time I have this reputation of commenting on who was just up, you know.
Oh my
and-
God, I would just
make
crash
some
my
remark.
car on purpose on the way home after that. No.
Yeah, they were brutal.
Oh my God. I mean, but good for you.
But
yeah.
that was the biggest growth I ever had as a comic. It was early on, so I had a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest stretch of growth for sure.
What's your writing process like? Are you a big
I do.
writer guy?
What I do is typically
Mm-hmm.
I'll just take notes all day. I
Right.
write it
Anything you
down,
think of, right?
put it in my phone, write it
Yeah.
on a notepad or whatever,
Yeah.
and then occasionally, once a week or every couple of weeks, I gather up all these notes together.
Yeah.
And I kind of articulate, put them in a document, an Evernote document online,
Nice.
so I have them with me. And then I'll go back through and start working some of these out. I'm not great at writing down. Here's my setup punchline. I write out my idea and then I
Right.
work them out on stage.
Yeah.
And I get on stage enough so that it's normally anyway, I get on stage enough where it's, I can just, I can riff these things into them along with, established material stuff I know it's going to work,
Yeah.
especially if I'm getting paid.
Right, of course.
But then, kind of work that in and figure out how it's going to fit. And I have I have some comedy that I can really only do at a club and others.
Yeah.
Just because, not because it's dirty or anything, but, HR departments get sensitive over the
Right.
topic sometimes. So
Yeah.
you got to be careful.
That's a great like if any comedians out there aren't like constantly writing down anything you think of that you find kind of interesting,
Yeah.
you should start.
That's
That's
the key,
how
too.
it
Not-
that's
not
how the
funny.
process starts.
Don't think of it as it has to be funny, just interesting.
Oh no, funny's if you get lucky and you happen to think of something funny. That's great.
Yeah.
But like even just kind of like, oh, that's different. And
Why do people use that term? Why is this?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? How's this? Why does Adidas have 3 stripes or whatever it is?
Yeah. No, right.
And
Yeah.
figure, write those things down so you can go back to it and start thinking about, what that looks like. I always do the who, what, when, where, why on everything. Why is this ketchup bottle on the table? Who put it there? You dig into it and you come up with some great material that way.
Yeah,
It sounds really
absolutely.
mundane, but that's really where a lot of it comes from.
Yeah. And like a lot of like clean material,
Yeah.
from more than like it's like not that hard to make, I don't
Yeah.
know, drug and dick talk funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's
But
I always kind of
finding the
it's a
funny
cheat.
in something mundane and
Yeah.
ordinary,
Or
is
just
really
every day,
good.
something that's
Yeah.
every day is what
Yeah,
people relate to. So, and
absolutely.
it can be, it can get very deep and relevant and all that.
yeah.
but just the fact that anybody can relate to it. So
Sounds like you riff a lot on stage, kind of.
I do
Like
sometimes.
you're
It
willing to
depends.
like
Yeah, I'm
try stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm always willing to try something new. I just did this last weekend a couple new bits that I think are going to be great. They're not quite.
Were you
there yet,
always like that, or is that something that you've gotten better at, like the longer you've done comedy?
it's kind of come in waves. There's times
Sure.
where I've been more risk taking. There's times where I've been on stage and just not felt creative, so I
Right.
just kind of rely on
How
all
it's-
the
how
old
it's
material
been,
I've
right,
had
yeah.
and all the known
When you
stuff.
started, were you like kind of material heavy, where you'd like pretty much
Yeah.
remember something, then recite it, and then
Yes.
yeah, me
because
too.
because I
Yeah.
practiced it so hard, my 7 minutes.
Right.
I
Yeah.
had
You
that
want it to
nailed.
be tight. Yeah, exactly. And like,
Yeah.
and then as you get better at comedy, you just feel more comfortable switching it up and not quite saying the exact same thing. And
Early on, I guess I reached a little too far out of my own zone where I would get on stage and then I'd start to kind of riff with the audience a little bit. But I wasn't really ready to do that. And
Yeah.
So it would go down into a cone of silence or some awkward, just weird moment. But I kind of figured that out over time on how to work through all that stuff.
yeah, nice.
So yeah, that's my favorite times. The best, and I think for most comics, the best shows you have at the end of the night are the one. Oh my gosh, that was so great! Everybody was on, everything was hitting just perfect. And then I riffed a little bit with this guy.
Yeah, of
That guy.
course. Yeah.
That's where you feel creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. I mean, for sure, it's like most impressive to other comics. Like when
Right.
somebody's like good at riffing,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, damn, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like we all know the magic trick that is material. We know how jokes work. It's hard to make a comic laugh, even with like a good joke.
Right.
A fucking a lot of rooms that like, especially when I was in Oregon and I would go up to Portland a lot of rooms where it just like felt like it was cool to not laugh at other comics. I'm like, this is real fun, guys. I'm real glad I drove an hour and a half to be here.
Yeah. I think even for a normal audience, that what a trick you can use, or it's not really a trick, but make them feel like they're in the moment with you.
Yeah,
Don't
always.
talk about, I did that joke last week with this audience. That
Yeah.
to me is a killer. That's telling him this wasn't for you.
Yeah,
This is something I've said a million times before.
right.
So don't do those things. I always try to make my audiences feel like this is happening right now in front of you in real time, and we're in the moment.
Yeah.
And anything happens, we're going to react to and deal with. And so they don't feel like you're just reciting some memorized, page of
Yeah.
material.
What about crowd work? What do you think of crowd work?
Well, same thing,
Yeah.
if you're riffing a little bit. I love doing crowd work. I love
Sure,
it.
yeah.
I have several spots through my act normally that I reach out to the crowd to get their input on something. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I was at a casino a while ago, and there was a gal there, and I said, "Oh, so how long you two been together?" And she said, "Oh, just a week. We're staying in his trailer. I'm from Oregon." And so there's this whole story that I can unfold about how he's taking her in his trailer away from her home, and all.
Yeah.
So it was fun, but but that's not just as frequently as that is. Oh, how long you been together? 5 years, and they don't want to say anything more. And there's it's hard to get anything gold out of them. You can riff on almost anything, but that's the more they share, the better.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Where's the last place you went out of state and did comedy?
Seattle.
Seattle.
Well,
when was that?
A couple weeks ago.
That's like where I'm from. I grew up on an island near Seattle.
What island?
Whidbey Island.
Oh, I know Whidbey Island. I
Do
grew
you?
up in Gig Harbor.
Oh, did you? Oh, yeah. I grew up when I was growing up. I played traveling baseball.
Oh, really?
Be down in Gig Harbor every now and then. It was like a 2-hour drive, but oh man, I
Yeah,
didn't know
we,
that. Wow,
yeah.
Washington guy.
Yeah, from there originally. I moved to Phoenix about 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was up there doing a charity thing. It's 2 nights, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Great crowds.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like it up there. There's a bunch of. I like Tacoma Comedy Club. You ever made it down there?
Yeah, I headlined that a few years ago,
Nice.
and it was great because it's the first time I'd been back to do like a public event.
Yeah.
And so all my old classmates and family.
Yeah, of
everybody showed up.
course.
and that place holds a couple hundred people.
Yeah,
so
it's cool.
They were great shows. It was fun.
I bet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love Washington. If the sun would come out a little bit more, it'd be just perfect.
I always tell people, man, you should go up there. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yeah.
And I've been all over the world, but it really is. The Olympic Mountains and the Olympic Rainforest is beautiful.
Yeah.
On that one day in August.
Yeah. Go in August.
Every other day, it's cold, gray, and miserable, and wet.
Yeah, it's so true. Something about being like down in a city though, and you can see the mountains, and there's a city around you and the water, and it's just beautiful. Yeah. I think that if you could just like plan your life perfectly, if you could just book shows in Phoenix all winter, Seattle all summer. Yeah. And then, maybe California, Oregon during the spring and fall. Yeah. Or even here's nice in the spring.
Yep. Yeah, it's
just the summer right now when it gets hellish.
Yeah, June through August.
Do you book like a bunch of shows out of state during the summer?
I've always tried to. I don't usually.
That's so smart.
I don't usually get to.
Yeah.
Can't tell you how many times I've been doing outdoor shows in the summer
here.
And yet
I won't go.
Then I'm up in in Minnesota in February for some reason.
From some outdoor show, snowing.
I mean, it's brutal sometimes, but yeah, if you're lucky, you can do it that way. It's just hard to manage it.
Yeah. The bookers don't care that you're hot. Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff I do, they don't really book summers in Phoenix for. Conventions aren't here in the summer; they're in the winter. Community shows, all those things, they tend to do that in the winter when people are in town.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that would be ideal though, just to be able to kind of snowbird it.
Yeah. Do you have any advice? I guess for me and also anybody else trying to get booked more. It's I don't know. I guess one of the things that I found kind of difficult to navigate here is I feel like you have to reach out to people a lot more than I was used to.
Yeah.
I was in like a really small scene in Oregon where everybody that's doing comedy. There's maybe 25 comics that are out regularly. There's 4 bookers, and everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So you don't even really have to ask for spots. And it's almost kind of obnoxious if you do, because they're like, yeah, dude, when it's your turn again, we'll get you. Like, we know the 25 people. Like, we're not going to forget you.
Yeah.
I think but here...
That tends to happen at clubs, too, sometimes, even here. But I agree with you. I think the best booking advice, depending on where you're at in your career of it, but if you're at the hosting level or that kind of stuff, obviously for open mics, there's signups.
Yeah, of course.
But for getting booked on a show at a club anyway, if you're like at the opener level, it's just making sure you're in their face because, most bookers book at, I'm sitting down to do a few months right now.
Right.
I don't care that you contacted me last week. If you're not on the top of my mind right now, you're not going to be on the list. And it sounds sucky, but that's really how it is. And I definitely wouldn't send avails every week to anybody because I don't. But every month or two or a couple months, you send your avails just so they keep. Oh yeah, I remember that guy. Oh, I was thinking about him for this, and eventually you'll hit them at the time that they're doing the bookings. Beyond that, for most clubs they book local guys. Phoenix is tough because even if you're doing feature acts. If you're booking those, it's tough because a lot of the headliners come out of L.A. and they bring their own features.
Oh, careful.
They bring their own features, so that happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right. They're not always great, but that's so there's
but they're always their friend.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing too is a feature spot normally is 20, 30 minutes, and you're even if you're on a regular rotation at a club, that usually means maybe twice a year at a club,
right?
If you're lucky,
right? Yeah, of course.
So
there's a lot of comics.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's good. Like, what about kind of breaking in? I guess for the corporate world, you got to have clean stuff, right? For the most part.
Yeah. Some corporate events they'll tell you ahead of time. It's okay if it's a little edgy or something.
Sure.
I'll promise you.
Well, also, isn't clean kind of a weird?
It is
thing sometimes because nobody
knows how to define it.
Right, quite like I remember one time seeing Keith Ellis being like, he was like, yeah, it's so important. You got to keep it clean. They want you to be clean. And then he's going out there and doing jokes about like Mexicans stealing cars. And I was like, okay, like,
Right.
is that clean? Like, I guess it is. He didn't curse.
Right. Yeah. So clean normally is like, don't talk about bodily fluids and that kind of stuff.
Well, definitely that. No sex stuff.
And the cussing part. But you're right. You could be clean, but super racist.
Right.
Or
Which is hilarious or homophobic.
Right. But so when I'm working with corporate planners and stuff, I always just tell them it's HR friendly. Nobody in HR is going to get pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to drop the F-bomb. I'm not going to be racist. I'm not going to be super political.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, God, I hate political comics. It's like if you're going to talk about politics, you better make it clear that you're taking shots at both sides, or I'm immediately just...
Or at least come up with something clever and new. They don't do that either,
You can just tell when somebody is doing comedy to like shoehorn politics in, and it's just the most annoying thing. Yeah. It's like the worst kind of comics.
And you have to remember, half the room disagrees with you.
Yeah.
No matter what side you take.
Right.
So...
Right. I literally would rather watch somebody go up and talk about their trauma or whatever. Like, please. Like, at least that's interesting a little.
Yeah.
Did your dad beat you? Okay, that's something.
Yeah.
It is a little annoying how much people get caught up in that, like, attitude of, like, oh, we're comics because something happened to us. I was like, yeah, kind of. Like, it's so fun. Like, I don't think...
Right.
Anybody needs any excuse to do comedy other than like killing is fun. Like,
there's a lot of people that'll say, doing comedy, being on stage, that's my therapy, which is fine. But keep in mind that the audience paid, not you. So, just keep that in mind that you're supposed to entertain them more than anything.
You could do that. Could be a bit. It for sure could. Where you're like, a lot of comedians talk about how comedy's their therapy, and I feel like they forgot you guys paid, not us.
Right. And it's true. So many, and it can be fine. And there's a lot of great comedy that comes out of that attitude. But you have to remember that you're there for the audience. I think that's one of the things that's helped me in performing. When I first started, Brian Kohatsu and we started an improv, and but it was all about the audience. It's not about you. First of all, you're not on stage alone. The biggest key is to help the other people on stage look good. So it was never a selfish thing, and so I think that helped when moving into stand-up is that I'm there to make the best show. I want the show to go great. I want the whole show to go great, whether it's just me and the other comics or just me or whatever, but I want the show to go great. So it's for the audience, not me.
Yeah.
So just because I'm pissed off at something doesn't mean I want to rant about it on stage.
Yeah.
If I think it's funny, then I'll go. But
I think there's definitely something different about comics that did improv.
Yeah.
Before stand up.
I'll say this: the whole thing was, back then, moving from improv to stand up was one thing. There are a lot of stand ups that tried to move to improv that couldn't do it because it's not about them. They expect, hey, I'm on stage for me. I'm the star of my own moment.
Right, and it can't handle sharing the moment.
They didn't work well.
I took Brian's improv class twice now and really enjoyed doing improv.
It's a great skill. It's just a great exercise to go through.
I found myself way more willing to riff and just be in the moment on stage afterwards, which was kind of what I wanted out of it, but I didn't know if it would translate exactly, but it seemed to some degree.
Yeah, I think
just practicing all the different like act outs and things like that, you like start to realize like, oh, I could do this on stage more. When I go and watch professional comics, one of the things that strikes me the most is how good they are at act outs, and I'm like, that's something I feel like I'm definitely lacking in. Just like little physical movements that convey what you're doing. I went and saw Bill Burr probably about a month ago now. And he was doing this bit about how it's crazy what you can get canceled for these days. But he's like, but I could still be in the KKK. Like, that's still legal. I could be driving down the street in my robes, little white pointy hat with an Adolf Hitler bobblehead on the dashboard. Right. And when he hit that act out on the bobblehead, I fucking lost it. Like, it was so good. Yeah, it elevated the joke so much.
Anything you can do to color the scene a little bit to make it, come more to life is always better.
Yeah,
I'm awful at that too. I'm not great at act outs.
Yeah,
I try to be more animated on stage than.
I feel like with people like you that are like very you just like kind of stay in the same spot.
Yeah.
And you're not like hitting like a ton of facial expressions, but it makes it, when you hit a facial expression or an act out, it makes it hit that much harder. So it's still like a tool you utilize.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think silence and facial expressions are a whole another language you use. And you have to use them. But you're right. If you do it,
but you can be like hacky with it. Like Brian was just bitching to me about a comic the other day.
If it was too much of it, then it's just noise. It's not. But if you do it right, then I think you're right. It makes a difference.
Yeah. Comedy's such a weird thing trying to navigate. It's so abstract. And like kind of all you can say is like, did people laugh?
Yeah.
Like that's all that really matters. There's no rules beyond that, but
I get someone's making fun of me the other day about Savannah actually.
Yeah.
She was telling me, she goes, her impression of me at a comedy club or watching a show is me standing in the back with my arms crossed going, nope. And it's true, because a lot of stuff I don't like, but I will tell you this, I would never begrudge anybody for doing it, especially if they're getting laughs. I could think that's the hackiest, dumbest word. I hate that.
Yeah.
joke, but they got laughs, so hey, that's what they're there for. That's what they're doing. So
that's the problem with hacky, is that it doesn't mean not funny. And a lot of the times it actually means funny, but just overused.
Right.
So it's like, to comics, we're like, we've seen 4 other comics do variations of this bit, and we know you didn't steal it from them because it's low hanging enough fruit.
Right.
But like, it's not impressive to us that you're getting laughs with this.
Right.
So like, that's the annoying part of hacky sometimes.
Like, one of the things doing the ships is a lot of times the magician on board would be a comedy magician, so we do kind of silly comedy stuff.
Yeah.
And I would get so pissed off because they're the same bits over and over from every. These guys go to conventions and buy their the material. They literally, that's how most magicians work.
Yeah.
They go to conventions. Oh, here's a cool new trick. I'll buy that, and it usually comes with a joke or two, and they buy all of that. They purchase it. And then they go back and they practice it and work it in their act. I mean, that's not 100% of all of them, and not all of their act necessarily.
Right, but a lot of them.
A lot of it. And so they go out there, and, it's always the same thing. Oh, let me take this scarf, and I'm going to pull it out, and, oh, whoops, I pulled your bra out. Yeah, we all knew you were going to pull her bra out because we've seen it 1,000 times on television, on every stage show we've seen.
Yeah.
But still, people just fall over laughing. And I just think, how is that possible?
Yeah. I heard a comic tell a story. He did a show with a magician, and the magician was like, "Hey, you're the joke guy, huh?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm the guy that doesn't need a duffel bag to do his act."
Yeah.
I really like that. It is funny, like, when comics get too, like, oh, it's such an art form. You're like, yeah, I guess. People go on drunk, so...
Yeah,
I don't know how artistic that is.
Well, I think anything you do is an art form, and I think comedy certainly is that. And you can be good at it, or you can be not good at it.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
it is an art form, but it's also like, it's interesting in that lots of art, the more complicated you can be, the better. And with comedy, it's the opposite. The more simple you can be, the better.
I think oftentimes that's true. Yeah,
you want to, like, I don't like to use the word base, but like, you don't want to overcomplicate things with comedy. For sure, I know that.
Right.
Like, get to the point with as few words as possible. Right.
The whole word economy thing is important. You get say what you're going to say, nothing more.
Right.
Because you're just wasting time and energy and diverting from the funny.
Yeah. People don't like it when you use words they don't know.
Right. Well, so many comics too that go out there. I can't think of any locals or anything like that, but there are comics that have been pretty well established that you can tell they wrote their material and then they took a thesaurus to it and just tried to come up with obscure, longer versions of the same words.
Yeah.
It's pretty pompous sounding.
It's so annoying.
People don't like it.
Yeah, no. You got to be simple.
Yeah.
It's really important. You started 15 years ago. How old were your kids? Do you have kids?
I do. I have 3 kids. They're all in their 30s.
Okay.
So
they were in their teens then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were,
How was trying to navigate like starting comedy while having a family? Was it pretty
my
tough
kids
at
were
all?
my kids were in their later teens. So they
Okay,
were,
yeah, that's-
so they were kind of
If they're
doing their own
driving,
thing.
that's different.
Sure, yeah,
They're
yeah.
already going out. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't need to be at home tonight.
Yeah,
They're
I don't-
going out with their friends.
I would not have been able to do it earlier because
Right.
there was just too
That's,
much,
I guess,
you know.
what I was
Yeah,
wondering. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to, coaching Little League to, all the millions
Right,
of things you
yeah.
do when your kids are younger. I would not have been able to carve out that time. In fact, when I first started doing comedy, especially for stand-up, it was just going to be kind of this bucket list kind of, I'm going to try this out. And
That's really inspiring, actually, that
Well-
you've like had such like, I mean, like a good career. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Done well.
Yeah, I've done pretty well with it. A lot of that's just luck,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
when I started, I like I said, it was just a bucket list thing. I never thought I'd do more than that. It just
Yeah.
kind of evolved over the years till it became my primary source of income, till it became my only source of income.
Wow.
And I never in a million years would have thought this is what I'm going to be doing. I loved it right off the bat, like
course.
most comics do.
Yeah.
That keep going. I was addicted to it. But right away, I thought I can't spend all this time doing this unless I can make some money at it. And I didn't mean like big money, just enough to compensate myself for all this time and energy I was putting into it.
Because a lot of people don't.
Right.
You know?
So I immediately, and I had some experience with speaking at corporate events and things. So
That
I
helps.
kind of leveraged that into it.
Yeah. That
So I
helps.
could at least make a few bucks.
For
you know.
sure. Yeah.
But I remember, I did I drove all the way to Tucson for a 2-minute bit.
Yeah.
You know, and
Do you like laughs? Do you ever do laughs?
yeah, that was the Tucson one.
Yeah.
I'd drive all the way down there just for my 2 minutes at their open mic.
Damn.
I performed there, booked there a few times since then, but it's
Nice.
again been years. I just don't.
Yeah, they're tough, man. Like I went down there and did like a little audition by hosting their open mic, and the guy was like, "Man, you were great. We'll definitely have you back." And then just radio silence. I send my avails every now and then, but just don't hear.
It's fine. That's the same thing with all clubs.
Yeah.
By the way, if you ever go to a comedy convention or festival or any of that stuff,
Yeah.
they always have a panel of people up there, industry, quote unquote industry. And it's, people that book for clubs or whatever, they've been asked to come and be on there. And they will always tell you, just send your avails and just do it. It's all lies. I swear to you, they will never book anybody they met there that day ever.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be in front of them on stage and just did something crazy killer that they thought, okay, maybe I'll have him out to host.
Right.
But other than that, it's all they never book people from those things.
Yeah, of
and
course.
they would not. And the advice they give you is the same advice they tell their friends in their ear that they hate.
Yeah.
It's just keep reaching out. Let me know. And then they get pissed off that this guy won't shut up. He keeps texting me his veils. I'm not interested.
You said you were.
Well, yeah. Plus, that's the only way people can do it. I mean,
Right.
most of them get it. They know. I get it. That's what you have to do as a comic.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of dealing with booking. These guys that want to get booked.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I for a long time I had kind of a fantasy about running a comedy club, and I think my main motivation was just like it'd be fun to have a place to regularly like do comedy and be making money from comedy, and you wouldn't have to be on the road traveling.
Right.
Instead of like trying to be a famous comic, just have like a center where you can be a center of community. And Tom really kind of talked me out of it when he did my podcast, because he's like, everything changes and it's like hard to keep doing comedy once you're a club owner, because
Yeah.
everybody treats you different.
Right.
Everybody wants something from
Well,
you.
Tom has a level of integrity to it that he felt like, I don't want to get booked because I booked you,
Right.
and I don't want he still like he may not admit it, but he still loves doing comedy.
Yeah.
He wouldn't volunteer to do it, and he doesn't go up and do sets regularly or hardly
Right.
ever anymore. But he still, comedy's still something he loves to
Of course,
be part of
yeah,
and
yeah.
see. And when he's out of town, he goes and watches comedy.
Of course. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
loves doing that.
He talked to, yeah.
Even
He
in town
went
a
to
little bit.
Rogan's Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been with him like in Vegas and stuff, and that's all we do is go see comedy. All over
That's
the place.
awesome.
But when he's here in town at his club, he's that's his business. He's not thinking about being on stage or any of that
Right.
stuff.
Of course.
And I think that's true. And and I think it's to his benefit. That's the problem you have with these guys that own clubs just for the sole purpose of being on stage. It's
Yeah.
fine. And it's fine that it's their their money, what they want to do, but it doesn't usually bode well for the club itself.
Right. It's hard to pull off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Tom has a lot of integrity when it comes to the club,
Yeah.
and it's obvious. it sucks that he can't do or doesn't feel like he can do comedy more.
Yeah.
But I get it. Well, I get what he's saying, that like everybody's going to start treating you different. I know what he loves about you and Brian is that he doesn't feel that, you know?
Yeah.
You guys still bust his balls and talk shit.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, he doesn't feel that. And like, it's like, I don't want that. I still want to be like, I would want it to be I want it to be part of the community.
Right.
So it's like, if I feel like I'm removing myself from the community by being like a club owner or whatever, it's like, that's not quite what I want.
And he's right. If you do it right, that's what's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the guy, not to harp on the Comedy Spot anymore, but the guy that ran that, Sean Dillon, Dillingham, he goes by now, but he, that was a problem he had. Every comic that came through there, that was semi-regular at least, was a important relationship to him, a very personal, important relationship. Now, he'd screw him over in a second if he felt like they were doing something that he felt was a betrayal, which everything was a betrayal to him.
Right.
So, for example, if you performed there but you couldn't make it a weekend that he was hoping you could, and you said no, it'd be like, oh, now there's an issue in your relationship with this guy, and everything was so personal. And if you performed at a club that across town, he had some beefs with a couple of places, but you know, even if it wasn't a place he had a beef with, the fact that you did that for a lot of the comics, that was like, they betrayed me. They're traitors. They
went did comedy somewhere else.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So lame.
Now,
It's
in
the
his defense,
lamest.
he did give people a lot of opportunity there, and he could perform there
But like that's
a lot. But it's still
like,
not fair.
You want to take any opportunity you're given, and you
Right.
don't want anybody that's giving you opportunities to tell you to not take other ones unless there's a really good reason.
Right.
You know?
And it's weird because I never experienced that with him because I performed wherever I wanted, whenever, you know.
Yeah.
And I never had that issue with him, but I think I just had a different
Right.
relationship with him. The part of the problem is a lot of the comics, they were much younger than me.
Yeah.
And they looked to him. They almost had like a, parent-child relationship with him, and
Sure.
they would just do,
Yeah.
and he could tell right away, oh, this is somebody that's going to do whatever I say because they were
Right. And he liked that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what he loved. That's the people he put in charge.
Yeah. Feels like that's the lamest kind of club owner that could be. Somebody just like lording their power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people that are just like starting comedy? Like, what's your best advice?
You're just starting out.
Yeah. I don't know. For your first year. First
year,
People
I
that
would
are
say,
first year.
Work on your jokes.
Yeah.
Here's
hell
the
yeah.
problem. I see people, especially newer comics, go up, and I'll for some reason see them 2 or 3 times, and I know it's in their first year comedy, and it's a different 5 or 6 minutes of material each time. That's fine. You're writing. You're trying new stuff, but you better work on that stuff.
We
'Cause
also want to see you do jokes that work multiple times.
Yeah, and work those jokes till they're perfect.
Right.
Don't give up on them because they didn't get a laugh, or oh, okay, that got a laugh out of that one. I'm done with it.
Right. That's really good advice. I've seen people ask that a lot. They're like, should I be like making sure I do different jokes at every open mic because people have heard my jokes before? It's like, no,
Open mic is practice.
comics will judge you if they never hear you do the same joke twice.
They will, and any real comic in the room hears you doing the same material. They're going, yeah, that's his material.
part of the
He's working
process,
on that
yeah.
process. I mean, you think of any well-known or very successful comic, and that's what they do. Seinfeld is famous for
he maybe is a little extreme.
right, but he works 10 years on 1 hour of material, 10 years at a time. Or any good comic, they're out there on the road beating their special up over and over and over till they've got it honed in.
Yeah.
And it's not they're trying new material every time they go out. You're never going to get good at any of your material if it's brand new every time you step on stage.
Yeah, totally. How often do you think people that are like brand new should be getting on stage? Just as much as possible, probably.
Yeah, as much as possible. I remember early on.
Oh, you already said that.
I always felt like, man, I haven't been on stage for a week. I feel like
a week's a long time.
Yeah,
Well, a
I
week's
get
a
very
long time for
nervous.
me now, man.
Right.
So
I would say at least a couple times.
I've gotten way better at like dialing it back for like 3 or 4 days though.
Yeah.
Like my first couple years, it was like if I took a night off, it was like I need to get back out there the next day. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's also when you're that new. Actually, it was good for me. I don't know if everybody needs to perform that much. I know I did. I didn't have like a lot of natural stage presence. It took me a long time to figure out how to be myself on stage. And like I've kind of gotten a lot better recently because I've kind of figured that out a lot more than I had. And so now it's a lot easier to just kind of write a joke and do it instead of like, I'm instead of learning how to hold a mic and like keep it close to your mouth and
Yeah, to me, the big things are get on stage as much as you can and be yourself, be real. I mean, there's comics that play characters that do well, but it's not the norm, and it's not what most people want to see.
yeah.
When I realized I just be myself, and by being myself, that's, people often say, why do you always do clean comedy and all that? And I think overall my comedy comes across clean, but it's because that's who I am. I don't go up to strangers and drop the F-bomb and talk about their crotches.
Right.
So why would I do that on stage? I'd have to be, in order to do that on stage, I would have to be a character to do that. I'd have to be pretending to be that guy. And I just find it way more interesting to just be myself.
Of course. And like, that's interesting. I don't think of you as like a clean comic. I know, I know in like my head, like, oh yeah, he could do time clean. But like when I think about like my sets, I've seen you do at Stir Crazy. They don't come across as like clean to me.
Right, and I don't try to make them sound like...
kind of like in the same way that like Nate
Gosh and Golly and all that stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You're just not
Try to be
over
funny.
the top.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird to me. Somebody would be like, yeah, Mike James, the clean comic.
And you're right. I don't know that I'm even known for that. I think in the past I've been known a little bit more for that because I was known for doing the clean shows here and there and that stuff. Or, and
I think of Randy Hausner as the clean comic.
Right.
That's
right. His shows. Yeah.
That's his lane. It seems like.
Yeah, and his version.
Do you do his shows much ever?
I used to.
Sure.
I've headlined his shows a few times. It's been a while, but every once in a while I'll go out and do a set on one of his shows.
Sure.
And they always go well. Randy and I have known each other a long time. We get along real well. So
cool.
That works.
Right on. Well, thanks for being here, dude. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Anything you want to plug or like have out there? I know.
No, I don't have any.
You corporate guys, you're like, yeah, nobody needs my Instagram or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
it doesn't matter.
You can find me on all that, but Mike James Comedy is
sure
online.
Awesome.
But yeah, I don't. I think most stuff I have coming up is private events.
Anyways, right? Yeah. Well, you guys aren't invited.
Yeah,
all right. Thanks, dude.
You got it.